I wanted to make friends in general, but especially meet women. But I had no strategy or plans on how to learn Chinese. I was never afraid of looking foolish. I made an effort to have friends in Chinese. After a while, you start to get a feel for the more advanced stuff. And my Chinese started taking off. So I've been lucky that with each job I've had, I've often gotten the job because of my Chinese ability, but then that job in turn has given me more Chinese ability. A good CV will never replace a good network. A good network is always better. The actual quality of the instruction and the workload is fine for elementary. It's okay in junior high, except for the last year of junior high, and it's terrible in high school. What's your goal? To be in a place where you feel comfortable and where you like the music, or to learn another culture and learn the language?
Hello and welcome to the Learn Chinese Insights podcast, brought to you by ChineseTrack.com. Every week we interview expats from around the world who have learned Chinese as a second language to find out how they learned it and how they use it in their day-to-day life. So today I'm happy to have a friend of mine, Anthony Van Dyck. So before we begin, Anthony, can you introduce yourself in Chinese? Tell us where you are, where you're from, and what you do here.
好，大家好，我是 Anthony Van Dyck, or in Chinese 就是安东尼。我是一个加拿大人，已经在台湾快35年。然后现在我的工作，我是做那个英国再生能源公司，然后就是当那个营运长，COO, I guess.
All right, thank you very much. So you mentioned, you've been in Taiwan for 35 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what brought you to Taiwan in the first place?
I had already done one gap year of backpacking around the world, and I was just traveling for that first gap year and enjoying myself and just absorbing as much as I could. But I wasn't really learning anything. And I thought for my second gap year, I wanted to maybe learn a language, learn something about a culture. So I wanted to park myself somewhere for about a year. And the Chinese culture was really intriguing to me. I traveled through China, but not Taiwan. I think in the 80s, it was a different scene. China was much more closed to the outside world than it is now. So I almost was going to go to Japan, but then I realized that's what every other white boy was doing. So I thought I would try and do something a little bit different. I was a political science major in Taiwan in 1988. It had just lifted martial law. Jiang Jingguo had died, and in his stead, they had appointed Li Denghui as president. And that was Taiwan's very first Taiwan-born president. So that was a big deal. So with these three things in mind, that martial law had been lifted, that the last Chinese-born president had died and had been replaced by a Taiwanese-born president, I really felt that change was in the air and that Taiwan was on the verge or on the cusp of some dramatic changes. I didn't really know what to expect. And I certainly didn't think at that point that I would be here for 35 years. So I was in Chiayi, living on the outskirts of Chiayi city, but working in Chiayi County, which is, in those days, it was the middle of nowhere. To give you an idea how nowhere it was, the Lonely Planet at that time, and Lonely Planet was still a fairly new thing. The entry for Chiayi said something to the effect of, there's no reason to visit here except for the train going to Alishan. So there were, for months and months, years and years maybe, we knew every foreigner in town, to the point where if I saw a strange foreigner walking down the street, I would go and approach him. It's like, are you Andy Smith? And the guy's like, yeah. You're here visiting your brother, right? He wasn't expecting you till tomorrow, but you're here now. And like everybody knew everybody's business, which was kind of charming and kind of scary too. But so that was my first stay in Taiwan. It was all in Chiayi.
Oh. So what was your Chinese level like at that time?
So before I boarded the plane to come to Taiwan, I had a friend from Hong Kong who told me, it's like, Anthony, in Taiwan, they speak Mandarin. If you want to say goodbye, it's 再见. And if you want to say thank you, it's 谢谢. So I copied this down as best I could, and the plane ride over, I'm practicing, 再见, 谢谢, 谢谢, 再见. So when I got off the plane, I was completely fluent in those two phrases. And I was doing 谢谢 and 再见 to everybody I saw. But I had no strategy or plans on how to learn Chinese. I do remember, because of my age, especially, I think I wanted to meet the girls. I mean, make friends in general, but especially meet women. And I remember writing 你很漂亮, and I remember writing Neehen. Piao, I wrote Pyow, and Liang, I wrote Leeang, and then I said in brackets, say it fast, Liang, right? And so it didn't take me long to realize that my homemade phonetic system wasn't going to serve me very well. And I wasn't familiar with Hanyu Pinyin at that time. There was not a lot of Wei Giles or romanization in the streets, and what there was often inaccurate. So I asked Taiwanese people what they were doing, and Bopomofo, zhuyin fuhao. So I literally went to the bookstore and I bought coloring books that used Bopomofo, and like story time kids books that had, the words and the Bopomofo sounds, everything about, Xiao Bai Tu, the little white rabbit hopping through the woods. And I would just practice along with that. I didn't actually color in the coloring books, but, if it was like, ing, bing, ang, bang, bing, bang, it's like, okay, that's popsicle, so I'm learning all these kids' words. And that actually stood me in good stead, because when I was meeting people, and in those days in Chiayi, when you met, especially a man, there's sort of a ritual: name cards, two hands, exchange of cards, that was normal. Cigarettes, which was another thing, and also often bilang, betel nut. And if you could do these three things, it's like, oh, you were in. Especially if you could pull off the betel nut, then that was impressive. And now Taiwan has really become a non-betel nut kind of place, and I think that's good. But one thing that has been lost is this social interaction that's centered around betel nut and the giving and the receiving of it. But with the name cards also, because I was a foreigner, I would often ask people to write their names for me on the name cards. Could you write your name for me in zhuyin fuhao and Bopomofo? Which was pretty useful, because in Chiayi, a lot of people had really bad Mandarin. So even they wouldn't be able to pronounce their own names correctly. So if your last name was Zhang, they would say Zhang. Oh, 我姓张啊，我是张先生. Okay, so from the standpoint of a correct standard Mandarin teacher, that's horrible Mandarin, Oh, 我姓张, 我姓张, right? The whole sh sound and she sound, it's completely lost. Everything just becomes si. So it didn't help my standard Mandarin, but it really helped me blend in with the locals. And I started to make the connection between what was Taiwan Guoyu and what was standard Chinese. And so learning the sounds, the standards, by writing them down and then hearing them practice, that was really good. Another thing that really helped my Chinese, I'll also throw in the caveat, I had girlfriends and stuff one at a time. I was serial monogamous. But I had girlfriends who also would help me with Chinese. That was always a good source of Chinese. But another source that was very useful was MTVs. And because I was into martial arts and I was studying two kinds of martial arts, and in fact, that's how I learned to count, was through martial arts, doing push-ups, because everybody has to count out the exercise. So we'd be in like one big circle, and the first guy would be doing push-ups, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then the next guy would be doing sit-ups, and the next guy would be doing whatever. And when it's your turn, you'll feel pretty bad if you can't, even eke out 1 to 10. So you learn 1 to 10 pretty quickly. But with martial arts videos, I also learned something. Most of the videos were from Hong Kong. Jackie Chan was in his prime in the late 80s and early 90s. There were so many great Jackie Chan kung fu movies. I don't have a lot of respect or patience for Jackie Chan movies kind of in the last 20 years even. But in the 80s and 90s, he was amazing. He was great. And these movies always had the benefit of having Chinese characters, English subtitles, because it's Hong Kong movies, and because it was in Taiwan, dubbed in Mandarin. So any kind of movie that you're watching, the guy, he could be saying, 小明，我要杀了你. And then underneath, you'd see Xiaoming, I'm going to kill you. And then you see the characters, Xiaoming, 我要杀了你. So very quickly, you start figuring out what is 我, what is 你, and what the verbs are. And then you see these things, these participles like look. And it doesn't come instantly. It doesn't come in a week or a month. But after you've seen things hundreds of times, and action movies, like love songs, have the same vocabulary over and over again. That was another way to learn Chinese, was through love songs, KTV, because all the songs are love songs. The Taiwanese didn't really do rock in those days. I guess you could argue they still don't. But all these sappy love songs, 我会永远爱你, 爱你到天, whatever. If you learn 50 characters, man, that'll get you through like 50 songs, basically, right? So, and you just take the little bit that you have and you keep progressing with that and you build on that. And I was never afraid of looking foolish. I have the benefit of not being Chinese and being visibly not Chinese. And so nobody expects me to speak Chinese. So when I do speak Chinese, people are like, wow, it's wonderful. And it's a kind of a privilege. It's a privilege that Taiwanese people don't generally extend to ABCs. If you're an ABC and you're speaking really good Mandarin and then you muck up a little bit, people will look at you and like, what kind of Chinese are you? It's like, you make me sick, But if you're white, then it's like a totally different set of standards. And, you walk in, as you walk into a 7-Eleven and say, 谢谢, and people are like, wow, 中文真的好棒. It's funny. So that was sort of some of the ways I started with Chinese, and I made an effort to have friends in Chinese. And this was something that was easier to do when I was young. I had a lot more male friends in my 20s than I did in my 40s and 50s, because Taiwanese men, and when they're young men, whatever, they'll be adventurous and bold in their sort of social decisions, but a lot of them kind of revert once they're into career and family. And the friends that I've had, there was no formal breaking up or anything. They just sort of retreated into a very predictable kind of home life, work life, and they wouldn't go out anymore. And I think maybe it's something special about expat life, especially where we're very social. It's also partly my personality, but I've found it hard to keep up my relationships with men. With women, it's been a little bit easier. I think Taiwanese women are a little bit more willing to take chances linguistically, and maybe are encouraged in school more to speak English than the boys are, because the boys really aren't. And I found that as a parent and as an erstwhile English teacher too. My ex-wife and I used to have a couple of English bushi bands, so I'm pretty familiar with sort of the English levels of students here too.
So during this time, you didn't take any formal training at all for Chinese?
I had one 家教老师. She was my private teacher, but I never did classes in a bushiban or a school or a university or anything like that. And our classes basically were me asking her questions, things that I was encountering in my daily life. At that point, I was very interested in learning how to read and write, so I was busy with flashcards, making them. I started with her and probably continued for the next 2 years, on and off, depending on my schedule. But yeah, we kept it going for a long time.
So the characters you learned was all from KTV, movies, flashcards, just on your own?
Yep. I find that writing Chinese characters, if you're not writing them constantly, you'll fall out of practice. We had started a business and it was getting hard to keep up with Chinese, and I found I was getting rusty. But then what saved my butt was the iPhone and predictive text. So as soon as I started realizing that I could type in Chinese and I could type in pinyin, which I knew very well by now. So I'd be typing in Chinese and then I'd see the predictive text at the bottom. So if I type in 我 and I hit the character for I, 我, and then where I type in the Y for Yao, I don't even have to type in the AO, just the Y, and boom, the character for Yao shows up. And so I start recognizing, 我要, and then 去, ting, mai, whatever the verb is, you start plugging it in. And you know, the easy stuff is easy, but after a while you start to get a feel for the more advanced stuff. And I found my Chinese started taking off again, which was great. And then I think 2013 was when I started working in project management on construction, the airport MRT project. And that again, where I was in a very multilingual environment. I was working for Japanese, but underneath me and around me were mostly Taiwanese, some foreigners as well. So there was a lot of English spoken, but there was also a lot of Chinese spoken, and a lot of it was technical. So, I learned how to say, crimping optical fiber and stuff, the things which would never come up in your ordinary day-to-day conversation. I was all of a sudden learning. And when you learn something, and especially you're using it all the time, you sort of tend to keep it. So I've been lucky that with each job I've had, I've often gotten the job because of my Chinese ability, but then that job in turn has given me more Chinese ability, which has then prepared me even better for the next job. So it's a happy kind of, linguistic compounding of interest or something. It's working to my advantage for sure, though.
So you mentioned the career path, how you've gotten your jobs because of your Chinese?
Yeah, especially my first construction job. And this was kind of funny too, because I leapfrogged positions in the first couple of days. I'd been hired by Siemens to be an interface manager between themselves and the head contractor on the airport MRT project, which was a Japanese company called Marubeni. So the day of my second interview, they said, "Hey, you're in, you've passed, this is fantastic, welcome on board." And they said, "Are you available for dinner tonight? Because we're actually having dinner with the Japanese and you're already suited up. So since we're going to be, working with them on the daily basis, this is a good chance to get to meet them." I said, yeah, no problem. So we go to the restaurant and I find out quickly that nobody there can speak Chinese. And then they didn't know what to order because it was a checklist menu with no pictures. So I said, look, if nobody has any food allergies, and if you trust me, let me just order for everybody and I'll sort of tell you what I'm ordering. And there were some Japanese as well that were coming in taxis from the Linsen North Road area, and they didn't know exactly where to go. So I'm talking to their taxi drivers on their cell phones, trying to, give them directions. And they're really impressed. Just as impressed as Taiwanese are when we speak Chinese, the Japanese were equally impressed. On Monday morning, I had gotten a phone call from the head of the rail division and said, "Anthony, really sorry, we can't hire you." I'm like, "What?" It's like, "What's going on?" I thought things went well. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "They went really well. The Marubeni, they want to hire you directly, so you'll be in the same position, but you'll not be working for us. You'll be working for them. And also, you should know that they want you to do the same thing with all the other subcontracting companies as well. So instead of just being the interface manager between Siemens and Marubeni, I was now the sort of subcontract package manager for a bunch of companies, and all of this with no construction or project management experience. It was again one of those things of being in the right place at the right time, I guess. And the work was fairly demanding. There were numerous balls that I had to juggle all day long. And another funny thing happened, just a fortuitous Chinese language thing. My telephone number ends in the digits 560-995. And one of the subcontractors made the observation. He goes, "Oh, Anthony, 你的电话号码很好记，就是我要你救救我。I want you to save me. So 560-995就是我要你救救我。And because it was an easy thing to remember, and he didn't have to write it down, and he told the other subcontractors, it's, "Oh, 就是要找安东尼就对了， and 我要你救救我." And they all sort of remembered that. So now these are all guys that are working on site, and anytime they have a problem now, they remember the hotline somehow is, "I want you to save me. 我要你救救我." So I'm fielding questions and problems that aren't even in my theater, that aren't even in my department, but I'm too nice and Canadian to ever say no or find somebody else. So I'm just sort of handling it and delegating, passing it on. And the Japanese managers notice too. They're like, wow, it's amazing. Anybody has a problem, they all go to Anthony, you know? So, but that was just dumb luck, I guess, that I had an auspicious or easy to remember telephone number, but it helped me at work.
There's a lot of expats in Taiwan who come here and they start teaching English for a while. And then at some point they want to get out of that into like a non-teaching job. So do you have advice for people?
Yeah, and it's a tough haul. And so I had done something like that. I sort of did it twice, teaching English a little bit when I came back in 95 at a business English outfit. And after that, I did a couple other management consulting type jobs where I wasn't in the classroom. But when I got married, we decided we would start a bushiban. So we did that for maybe 8 years, I guess. And after that ended, then it was time for me to like rethink my career. And that was a really tough time. So I knew rail was over in Taiwan. There were no big rail projects, but wind was taking off. So I aimed specifically at the wind industry. There was a local law firm that was hosting a wind event, and I offered to volunteer in exchange for being able to attend the event. And through that event, I made enough connections that I got my first job with a wind turbine manufacturer later that year. And then after Chinese New Year the next year, I jumped into a full-time job with Enercon, which was an onshore wind turbine manufacturer, and stayed with that job until the job I have now, which is with Boston Energy, also offshore wind. But I was very deliberate in picking the wind industry and then trying to figure out how I can meet people who are in it, who might be able to help me. And just bit by bit, step by step, that's how I got things done.
So you'd recommend the networking aspect, get your foot in the door.
Absolutely. Nobody looks at CVs as a way to meet people anymore. The CVs, like the name card, are necessary artifacts of a past way of doing business. You can't apply for a job without a CV, and you can't go into a business meeting without a name card. But if you have a name card and no digital presence, you don't have email or you're not on LinkedIn or whatever, that's ridiculous in this day and age. You have to have these things first off. You have to have a digital presence or an online presence. People have to know how they can find you and who you are. A good CV will never replace a good network. A good network is always better.
Interesting. So now getting back to, you mentioned you have 2 daughters. So let's switch into, for foreign parents who are raising kids here in Taiwan, and presumably you wanted them to be fully bilingual in English and Chinese?
Yes.
So did they just go to local public school?
They did. Both of them started from kindergarten all the way to the end of junior high. My ex-wife and I were adamant that they learn how to speak Chinese in school because it's my belief, and I haven't seen any information that contradicts this, that to be truly fluent in Mandarin, in the vast majority of cases, you had to have received your education in Mandarin. There's a lot of foreigners that speak great Chinese, better than myself even. But if we're talking native speaker fluency, that only comes when you're sitting on your butt in school and writing characters hundreds and thousands of times and interacting with teachers and handing in quiz after quiz and assignment after assignment. That's the only way that gets done. And because my daughters are half, Taiwanese, they're biracial, we knew that nobody would ever take them seriously as Taiwanese people if their Chinese wasn't up to snuff. Even now, even as biracial people, they're referred to as Waiboren, and not necessarily in a malicious way, but definitely in a sense that you're not like us, you're different. But at least they have the language, they're fluent in it, so that's great.
I guess the concern that some expats have is, the homework level and that kind of part. What are your thoughts on that?
The actual quality of the instruction and the workload is fine for elementary, and this is my opinion. It's okay in junior high, except for the last year of junior high, and it's terrible in high school. So last year of junior high is terrible, and all of high school is terrible. Any spark that kids have tends to get extinguished or crushed by then. It's my personal view that the education system in Taiwan is not designed to educate all the students. I believe it's designed to identify maybe the top 15% and maybe accommodate the next 25%. And if you're in the bottom 60% of the class, well, thank you for playing. Maybe you can get a service level job or something like that, or go to vocational school or something. But if you're not in the top 15%, they're not really interested, which is why there's so much pressure on Taiwanese kids to get into that top 15%. If you can break into the top 15% of your class, your school, you can breathe easy. Everything's going to go well for you. But if you're not in that level, you'll be looked down on. And in Taiwan, social standing of students is directly related to their academic performance. And you talk about, tiger mothers and all that. Taiwanese mothers will tell their kids who they can and can't be friends with. Maybe that exists in the West too, but I don't believe to the same extent that it does in Taiwan. I know fairly for certain that some of my daughter's classmates were discouraged from becoming close friends with them on the basis of mom and dad were divorced and dad's a foreigner, and they didn't quite trust. It was outside their realm of understanding. And they thought, well, it's like, maybe you can be nice to them in class, but don't get too close or too attached or something. It's like, focus on your studies, right?
So looking back as a parent here who sends their kids to public school, is there a way to navigate those two, wanting them to learn Chinese, but also not have all the pressures of the academia and those kind of things?
Yeah, but again, you will fail you're going to let somebody down. So if you tell your kid, it's like, look, I want you to try your best, do well in school, but, other things are important too. If basketball or whatever, or they want to play after school, which is a totally normal thing and should be encouraged, I think. Playtime is important for kids. I don't mean like turn on the TV or go to your devices or whatever, but I mean just hanging out with your friends and figuring things out as you're hanging out with your friends. I think that's a great thing, but teachers will discourage it. And if you're bringing the class average down, the teachers will sort of pointedly say, well, our class would have been the top in the school, except for so-and-so who sort of dropped the average down. And it's not always that explicit, but it's definitely implicit that academic underachievers are hurting everybody else. And I saw again and again in black and white report cards where the teachers would say, we wish your older daughter would conform more. And that is a word that, I don't know, woke America and woke Canada would not be using to say, well, your daughter should conform and be like everybody else. Everybody, of course, is a precious little snowflake and needs to develop their own personalities. I get what they're saying, and I understand to an extent the importance of conformity and being a team player. But I think just as maybe woke America has taken the opposite too far, I think Taiwan has also taken the pressure to conform too far. So parents will definitely let down their kids if they don't put pressure on them. They'll let down their teachers. You might find a school, especially if it's one of these, there are some experimental schools where they're better. But by and large, the educational system is terrible.
So there's a lot of expats who've lived in Taiwan for many years who don't bother to learn Chinese. They can live perfectly, happy lives here just on English.
It's rude. So if you look at, say, in the West, if I see anybody who's under the age of 50 and has lived in Canada for, more than 5 or 6 years and they still don't speak English, I'm like, come on, man, get with the program. It's a little bit different if they're old. I recognize that a lot of old people have been brought in by their kids who are working here. No problem. Old people get a free pass. But if you're working in Canada or the United States, you should take the time to learn the language, the basics of it. I'm not talking, quoting Shakespeare and stuff, but you should be able to communicate. And I meet so many foreigners that just get by on, I won't say white privilege because it's not a white thing, but on Western privilege. And they just think, well, I can get by on just being who I am. Yeah, you can. And Taiwanese people are really tolerant about it, and they accept it more graciously than many countries. But I still think it's rude.
Looking back at your journey of how you ended up here and how you learned Chinese and your kind of career path, is there anything you would have done differently?
I think I had planned to get an MBA a couple of times along in my career, and that would have helped me a lot. That's not a language thing, though. That's maybe just a career thing. A degree in and of itself isn't particularly useful. A degree plus a master's degree, but it doesn't have to be an MBA, a master's degree also. It gives you a lot more credibility in the workplace. And I think that maybe has hurt me in the past, especially when I didn't have a lot of experience in the fields that I was sort of aiming at. Now, maybe it doesn't matter so much. In terms of learning the language, no, I think I've done fairly well. There's an expression, there's a Taiwanese idiom which I like to use, and it's a great one. I highly recommend this idiom for a foreigner who has a bit of Chinese to learn. It's 比上不足，比下有余. And literally it means better than the worst, worse than the best. And it has the simultaneous dual effects of being first self-deprecating and second of using an idiom, which is the Chinese equivalent of using big words. So in English, if a kid wants to sound particularly precocious, he'll just use big words, and that means they have a good command of language, right? In Taiwan or in Chinese culture, there's no such thing as a big word because all the words are one syllable. But if you know obscure idioms and how to use them and when to use them, that sets you off as an educated person. So this one idiom, 比上不足，比下有余, every time you use that, it gives you, first of all, you're being self-deprecating, saying, oh, there's a lot of guys better than me. I'm maybe better than the worst of them, but I'm nowhere as good as the best of them. And at the same time, you're elevating yourself because you're using an idiom. So it's a tricky one. I think that's where my Chinese is at right now. Honestly, it's better than the worst, worse than the best.
So you think it's completely possible for people to just learn Chinese on their own without enrolling in school or any formal study?
Possible, but it's not easy, and you have to create the environment for yourself. So I'm a very social person. I like to get out and do things. I've always been involved in the community in different ways. I have no problem cold calling people or just approaching people that I don't know and, 做朋友. Sometimes it's a little bit weird, but if you're authentic and you follow through with that, then it becomes less weird. Maybe the initial approach is sometimes weird when you just start talking to people, but after a while they see that you're not psycho and don't want anything unreasonable from them, then it all works out. So yeah, you can do it, but you have to create the environment for yourself. Friends is a great way to go. Workplace isn't sufficient. You need some place to go after work. You need beers shared, meals shared, experiences shared. All of this is a lot easier to do in your 20s and 30s than it is in your 40s and 50s. So if you're new in Taiwan, don't wait until you're 40 years old to start doing this because it gets harder the older you get. When you're 20 something, you can go out and socialize 5-6 nights of the week and have ruchao with everybody, and nobody expects too much from you. But the older you get, the harder it is to do that.
But I think with the socializing, many expats just get stuck in the expat bubble, like they're socializing with Westerners. So is it easy to get like Taiwanese socializing then?
No, not easy. You have to be deliberate about it, and you actually have to turn away from the easy thing, which is to go to the local pub with your foreign friends and start figuring out, it's like, all right, maybe some people from the place, your workplace, are doing a KTV. Go to the KTV. You'll be the only foreigner there. You won't like the music. You won't understand half the words, but what's your goal? To be in a place where you feel comfortable and where you like the music, or to learn another culture and learn the language? If you want to learn the culture and learn the language, man, learn some cheesy Mando pop songs and practice them so that the next time you go to a KTV, you can pick up the microphone and people will want to sing with you. And then you take that little bit of success and you learn another song. And then you take that and then all of a sudden you're in a business meeting, except the business meeting is also in a KTV. And boom, you've got a repertoire of 3 songs now. And now things start happening for you.
Oh, very good advice. And then lastly, just you had mentioned earlier about learning those idioms. So what's your source of learning new idioms like that?
For that, it's best to get a 家教老师, a one-on-one teacher, because you're not going to come across them in regular life. And when you see them in a movie or something, the translations are often not clear or the references are so obscure you don't even realize you're looking at an idiom. So it's a really hard thing to come by. It's a little bit like if you're new to English and you want to expand your vocabulary, it's better to do one of these new vocabulary word of the day and then 5 different ways to say it, right? It's almost better to take that kind of approach. And there's a lot of idioms for the same things that we have expressions for in Chinese. You know, if we say you can't judge a book by its cover, Chinese 人不可貌相, and it's the same exact same meaning, but it's not about books and covers. It's about appearances and expectations. So you have to know when to substitute this for that and that for this, and that just comes with experience. And you know, you'll ask your teachers, like, how do you say you can't judge a book by its cover, or how do you say, you know, this or that? There's always some opportunity to use it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your insights. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks.